very sad. So pi prime for every I is pi minus the centroid, p bar. So they are simply substituting. Oh, this is kind of confusing. So they're going to substitute pi prime with pi minus p bar. So the sum from I equals 1 to n of pi prime. So what they're doing is they're just substituting. Oh, you can't see any of this. Let me take down the Firefox. Oh, and I've got a terminal that I want to take down. Sum from I equals 1 to n again. And they're just substituting pi prime with pi minus p bar. But what's confusing is you see that n there, that in the document. It's very confusing because of this n right here. This n right here is annoying. And the reason it's there is because, and they didn't write this very clearly, is that in fact what's happening is you can write it instead like this. What they mean to be writing is this: minus np sum from I plus the sum from I equals 1 to n of pi. See, they wrote it in a weird order that makes it look like this quantity np bar is being summed up. But that's not true. This np bar is not part of the summation. Rather, the things that are getting summed up in this expression here is the pi. So a better way to rewrite the same thing, if I take down a Firefox now, is like this. It's what they mean to write is something like this, where they take n times p bar, my bad, n times p bar, and then add to that the sum from I equals 1 to n of pi. So do you understand how this and that are equal to each other, this line and that line? I know, it's really confusing, right? Yes, much happier. Good. Good. And then I guess in this last part, they're just kind of, for some reason that I can't quite see yet, they've decided to rewrite np bar in this funny way. Oh, no. I see why, right? Because p bar is by definition 1 over n sum from I equals 1 to n of pi. So, yeah. Oh, you can't see this again. Right. So what they then did is they replaced this p bar with this crazy sum here. And so you can see that this whole thing then, that is the sum of the pi primes, is 0. And similarly, when you give this treatment, and I believe this is the point, when you give the same kind of treatment to the sum of the qi primes, they're also 0. So you can think of it like all these, once you write down these things sort of relative to their centroids, it makes sense, right? That the adding up all these vectors will result in the centroid. Yeah, does make sense, right? Okay, so then, I guess, looking at their objective function, they replace all right, see you later, non-dairy neutrino. Thanks for hanging out. Let's see, how does this work? Pi so like RPI feels like to me what's happening there is they're taking this equation right here and solving it for pi. So pi is the same as pi prime plus p bar. And then they're going to replace this pi here with pi prime plus p bar. And we get two terms as a result. R pi prime plus rp bar, right? And they do a similar thing, I would guess, for minus qi. From when you're looking at minus qi here, they're going to take this equation and solve it for qi to get qi prime plus q bar. And because it's being subtracted, you get a minus qi and a minus q bar. And then going down, this is just the definition of the norm squared, the dot product of these two vectors. And then they isolate some of these terms. So like they look at this guy dotted with this guy. That's of course the norm of that squared. Yeah, I'm not sure. Like this is just a bunch of manipulation. And I would imagine that at some point they're going to exploit the fact that the sum of the pi's is 0. And it looks like that happens right here. They get some expressions that involve the sum of pi prime and the sum of qi prime, and those can be 0. And so we can eventually rewrite our objective function like this. The minimizing translation should make the second term in the last equation above 0. So because this thing doesn't involve b at all, and you have freedom to choose b, you might as well choose b, which makes this second term completely go away. So that makes sense, right? So then you choose b in such a way that this norm squared is 0. So that tells you what b is. That's sweet. But now you still have the problem of figuring out what this r is in this quantity right here. Yeah, and that's essentially what they, so like if you look, they're now only going to focus on this term and minimize over the set of rotations that quantity. And now I guess they're going to use quaternions. And they say we're going to get an exact solution to this equation using quaternions. Good, I'm glad. And hopefully yeah, I know that I think this is bad notation. This was poorly conceived by them. They should have put parentheses around this summation is what they should have done if they wanted to write it in this order. Which one is that, Does here? The quaternion one or the coin flips one? Oh my, the quaternion Fourier transform. That sounds heavy. But I'll let you muddle through this last part. But if you ever have any questions about it, please feel free to ask. But folks, we're nearing 3 hours and 40 minutes here in our stream. Really? Oh, I think I stopped somewhere in the middle because I had a technical hiccup. So I've actually been streaming for more like 4 hours now. which is sort of the minimum I want to be able to do. Thank you all so much for coming on out, hanging out. No problem. Anytime, Bascos. I hope to see you again. And if anybody, I plan on actually tomorrow. I have a meeting to help set up my kids' elementary school stuff. So I'm not going to be able to stream at my usual time tomorrow, unfortunately. But I will be back on Thursday. And maybe I'll do tomorrow a evening stream and a morning stream instead. I'm still experimenting with the right times to be doing this. But I think I'll be back certainly on Thursday. Yeah. Thanks, Vector Raum, for the follow. Whoa, go for yourself. Thank you so much for the subscription. I really appreciate that. Wow. It's been so fantastic to see the level of enthusiasm and support for this channel. And I just hope it keeps going for sure, right? And I think it will, right? It seems like there's a lot of enthusiasm, positive and negative, for math out there. And I think that, we can hang out in this community, build a community that will make us all stronger. And that's really what I hope to see out of this community. All right. But I have been called down to dinner. My lovely wife grabbed something from the outside world. Bless her heart. She braved pandemic and the smoky air and did it. But, oh, interesting. Yeah. Why comment? I'm familiar with Hacker News. I used to read that aggregator like years ago, but I kind of fell off, honestly. Yeah, but that's not a bad idea. Any ideas like that for, exposure or whatever. I'm very bad about these things. I'm like a goddamn boomer. Okay. So like all of these kinds of outlets, I need like I need to be informed about.